Good morning. Welcome to Intro to Psychology. This is the week 1 lecture supplement. And hello from beautiful Jacksonville, Florida. This is actually Fort George, Florida. I'm up here for the Easter weekend, and I thought I'd record the chat from one of my favorite places in the world, my parents' back porch. Got a second? I'll just show you the view I have in my parents' backyard here. They have waterfront property. There's their pool, and out there you can see the water. I've been looking at that water literally since the day I was old enough to remember. I just thought I'd give you the view out here. It's really nice. It's a little chilly, but especially for Florida, but it is still April, so it's nice. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what is psychology. Psychology is the scientific study of human thought, emotion, and behavior. It's important to remember a number of things about psychology. One, it is a science. It is not, as some people I think believe, the iteration of common sense or folk wisdom. No, it is actually a science. So people conduct research and they didn't make determinations, and other people critique that research, and it's a process. And psychology is interesting because it happens everywhere. Anywhere there are people, you find psychology. Isn't that cool? I remember when I was a teenager. Back in the day, back when I was a teenager, we had these things called malls. And malls were places where you could go buy things. I'm being semi-sarcastic. That's something I'm good at. People would go and buy things at the mall. And oftentimes people would just go to the mall to hang out, just to walk around and what have you. And when I was a teenager, they would actually have people who would stop you in the mall if you looked like the kind of individual they were looking to sell to, and they would ask you to fill out a survey and try out a product for them. Usually it was a new beverage or a new, usually food products or stuff like that. At least that's what I always got selected for. And you try it and tell them what you think of it. And they'd usually give you a couple dollars, or they'd give you a free sample, or what have you. So so that is an example of a form of psychology. It's based on the psychology of marketing. What makes people buy, and so forth. Psychology is a huge world of lots of research. When most of us think of psychology, we think of an individual sitting on a couch next to somebody with a pad and paper telling them about their childhood. That's part of it. That's clinical psychology. That is when somebody actually goes to a doctor for help with emotional problems. So that's one form, but that is not by a long shot the embodiment of the entire world of psychology. Literally everywhere you have people, you have psychology. You have psychology of business. You have the social psychology. You have sports psychology. You have social psychology. You have developmental psychology, the study of how a person changes and stays the same over time. Educational psychology, there's school psychology, there is media psychology. Anywhere where there's people. Health psychology is a very, very relevant a part of psychology today. Anywhere where there's people, even if it's just one person, there is psychology. So there is a place, and it's very versatile. I guess I should tell you my story about becoming interested in psychology. Watch out for this, because you might find yourself in a similar situation. Then you'll want to pursue psychology at the graduate level. When I was in college many, many moons ago, it really isn't that long ago, but I'm just saying, I had finished up my major, which was political science, and my minor, which was philosophy, and I needed some courses over the summer to get me to the number I needed to graduate that fall. I needed 2 particular classes. I had taken a class on computers that term, and I'd also taken another class that started 6 weeks into the term, which was it was a philosophy class. It was called Monotheism. It was a survey of all the major religions. I still would have liked to take that class. However, I walked into the class, I looked at the syllabus, and I realized that there was a paper due every 2 weeks. So I politely put down the syllabus, went to drop an ad, and took an intro to psychology course instead, where all the tests were pick out the right answer. So I kind of found myself haphazardly in a psychology class, but I came to find I was fascinated by it after a while. It helped me in a lot of ways. It helped me to understand motivation. We'll talk about motivation later in this course. It's very versatile and useful in teaching how to get along with people. Okay, get out your violins. I was a very unpopular child growing up. So taking psychology helped me to understand how to work with people better, how to not be a pest. It actually helped me to transform myself in many respects. And, I still to this day, my present life, I'm an attorney in my main life. That's why I come out here every couple of weeks to get away from it all. But I use psychology every day when I'm dealing with judges, when I'm dealing with clients, when I have to go in front of a jury. A large part of my job is having to persuade people and influence people. And so the fact that I do have a background in psychology is very helpful with that. It also, it also helps. It's interesting. It's just sometimes it's just flat out interesting. The kind of studies you see in psychology are, in many ways, can be mind-blowing. One study that was particularly fascinating, but also kind of calls into question ethics, was the Zimbardo's Stanford prison study. There's actually a movie on Netflix if you're interested about the prison study. Nutshell, a group of students who were volunteers were basically assigned to two groups: prison guards or prisoners. They created a mock prison in the basement of the psychology department at Stanford University. And half of the individuals, they were all males. And again, one of the things important about research is you have to look at your sample. But half of these individuals were guards, and the other half were inmates in the prison, just by a flip of a coin. It was presumed no significant differences between the two groups in any way. But they had to call off the experiment after about a week. It was supposed to be a 2-week experiment because it got too real. The guards were being sadistic towards the inmates. The inmates would, in one instance, one actually engaged in a hunger strike. Many of them tried to escape. They forgot that this was an experiment. This was not a real situation, but it became a real situation, and that raises the question: why? Why did that happen? Was that an ethical experiment? I mean, Philip Zimbardo's name is still well known in psychology circles because this experiment was just so shocking. And when I think it raised some questions, and as a result, today things are done very differently. There's all some questions whenever you're talking about research. You also have to look at sampling. If we were in a brick and mortar school, most likely we would be conducting active research. I'd still like to. Getting back to what I was telling you before about the fact I was taking a computer class, one of the things that I found very interesting that was a similarity between psychology and computers is just input and output, how the mind operates. So, but the question with psychology often becomes, is psychology just the scientific study of the thoughts, emotions, and behaviors of college sophomores? Most of your subjects are, in fact, students in Intro to Psychology courses or similar psychology courses. And the question raises, usually at well-known universities. And the question is, how are those individuals different from somebody who might not be upper to middle class, who might not be 20 years old, who might not have the same kind of life as an individual who is a subject in a similar study? Who are we leaving out? And are we trying to also make pronouncements and generalizations from our research to those groups that are left out of our sample? It is a substantial question. But after I graduated, it was the time of the '93 recession, so I could not find a job coming out of college. So I went back to school and got a master's in psychology. I got a post-baccalaureate in psychology, where I just took nothing but psych classes for a year, and then went back. My parents thought I was never going to leave college, and went back and got a master's in psychology. Did some work. I was a case manager, and that put me in. I was a case manager working with individuals in the court system, so that had me going to court about 2 or 3 times a week, and I got to know a couple of public defenders and like what they did, and said, you know what, I could go back to school and become a lawyer. Within a year, I was back in school again. My mother's like, are you ever going to leave college? But I was back in school to get a law degree. And again, I use psychology every day. Psychology and the law is a very interesting field. I mean, you ask yourself questions about how you can persuade a jury. How can you persuade a jury to give a much larger judgment in certain circumstances? If you Google the name Linda Anderson Foley, she was the professor for whom I was a grad assistant in grad school, and she did a lot of work with psychology and the law, and often looking at juries. One thing that they conducted a research experiment where they found that in a civil suit, oftentimes, if a female victim of an offense is usually in a civil case, where there's usually a money judgment, if that individual is younger or if the individual is white, they will oftentimes get oftentimes a jury will award a larger judgment. I'm not saying that's right. In fact, it exposes a great problem in our society. But that's the kind of studies you can conduct because, again, anywhere where there's people, you can find psychology. So, at any rate, with that, I'm way over time, but I could talk about this for hours. So I will go ahead and end this chat, and I look forward to seeing you in the chat room so we can talk soon. Have a super day. Take care. Bye-bye.